Well, shalom to the 12 tribes scattered abroad here in the continental of the USA and those abroad, over there in the Eastern Hemisphere. Shabbat shalom to all of you. I pray all of you are having a blessed time, and also you are enjoying these studies that we're actually so blessed to be partakers of. And we hope that this series has helped many of you connect the covenant with the book of the law and see how it stretches out, so we can get more information that will help that, and through the new covenant help us walk out the covenant in much fruitful and detailed way. And this actually is the part 4 of this series. And Brandon, he will be teaching this tonight on the dovetail on the PaRDeS, but he's going to touch up on the PaRDeS, but he's also going to touch up in how important in the book of Genesis, how it's associated for the last feast, the fall feast or the winter feast. And so he's going to go ahead and touch up on that. So if you haven't seen the first 4 feasts prior to, go to the last teaching, which should hopefully be out soon. All right, so I hope everyone is blessed by this. And if you want to join us live, please sign up at torah2thetribes/connect and register so you can join us live, and we will be blessed to have you. And well, I hope that everyone has a wonderful time hearing this message today. Brandon, whenever you're ready, brother, take it away.
All right. Appreciate that, Jose. All right. So like Jose said, we're going to be talking about tonight in part 4, continuing our series on dovetailing. Now, just to kind of give a quick, brief synopsis or recap of what we're talking about with the dovetailing is, which you can go back on our Yahuwah Servant YouTube channel and watch these. But dovetailing is what we were talking about, where it's a point that is used to tie the book of the covenant to or together with the book of the law, which was added. So the two books, the book of the law and covenant, and the book of the covenant rather, are separate, but they're interconnected. We talked about in week 1. Just like the dove was split in its 2 wings, but not completely severed when it is offered as a sacrifice. And we talked about Leviticus 1:17, okay? So in the same way that the book of the covenant and the book of the law are split, but are not completely severed. This is what we call dovetailing. So the 2 are joined or knitted together, just like the quote unquote Old Testament and the quote unquote New Testament, right? And then the 5 pillars that we talked about of, that they're basing all of this off of, or the categories, is, and what it means to live out this Melchizedek priesthood lifestyle is the 5 bullet points of keeping the Shabbat, which we covered in part 1, obeying the commandments, which we covered in part 2, how the 613 laws are summed up within the 10 commandments, and that the greatest commandment and the second commandment are those 2 hang upon all the Torah and the prophets. Number 3, which we're split in 2 parts. So part 3 is what Jose did last week on the what are typically known as the spring feast, but Brother Jose showed us that it's actually better said the summer feast. And then tonight I'm going to be touching on what are typically known as the fall feasts, but are actually more of the winter feasts. And then next we'll be going into the dietary requirements. And then last but not least, we'll be talking about the testimony of Yahusha. So these are what we call, or well, that's what I'm calling them. I don't know what they're called, but this is what I'm calling the 5 pillars, or this is what we're calling the 5 pillars of dovetailing, or the 5 main components of the covenant which we keep: keeping the Sabbath, obeying the commandments, observing the feasts of Yahweh, following the dietary requirements that are mentioned in Leviticus 11, and possessing the testimony of or witness of Yahusha. Okay, so just kind of a brief, bring you up to speed on where we're at. Okay, now let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so tonight, like we just said, we're going to cover part 4 of dovetailing. Okay, so last week Jose went over the 4 summer feasts, which are Pesach or Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Shavuot, or what is known as Pentecost. Okay, and this week we'll be finishing up this portion of our dovetailing series on the feast. And tonight, which I've already started to do the quick recap here of all 7 feasts taking place throughout the covenant. So what we're establishing here is that even though the feasts, so 3 of the feasts, the 3 pilgrimage feasts, are actually mentioned by name within the covenant, which the covenant is Genesis 1:1 through Exodus 24:11. And we talked about this in our Covenants of Promise series. I believe it was part 3 where we really hammered down what the boundaries of the covenant were and the terms and the parameters of the covenant. But within Exodus 19, I think it's verse 8 to Exodus 24:11, it talks about the 3 pilgrimage feasts of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Shavuot, and the Feast of Sukkot. Now we know that the Feast of Unleavened Bread is married to the Feast of Passover, the Feast of Pesach, right? So obviously Pesach or Passover will be included in that. But we did not have witnesses to, Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, or first fruits within those 3 pilgrimage feasts. We did not have references to that. So tonight, that's what we're going to kind of bring forth. And as always, and sometimes I forget to mention this, but, please don't take our word for this, take his word. So be a good Berean, take what we're talking about tonight, and go and see it as so. And if it's not so, then don't believe what I have to say, believe his word. Right? Test all things and only hold fast to what is good. But we're going to bring out instances before they even went to Mount Sinai where the feasts are being kept. Now, some of them are obvious instances, and others it's hinted to or referenced, or hinted at or referenced to. So that's why it is a great time to talk about the Hebraic mindset, the multi-layered interpretation of scripture known as PaRDeS. And if you've followed Torah to the Tribes for any length of time at all, I think Brother Matthew has probably referenced this, if not just even mentioned it in passing in almost every teaching that he's done. But some he's gone into it more than others, right? But PaRDeS is a 4-part, okay? And PaRDeS refers to the approach of biblical exegesis in Hebrew, or to the interpretation of text in the Torah study, okay? Now, just a quick, I should have had the definition of exegesis, but the definition of exegesis, okay? There's exegesis and eisegesis, okay? So exegesis is where we don't have any preconceived notions, okay? We're not, I'm not looking for scripture to prove the point that I've already decided has been made. But exegesis just allows the scripture to interpret the scripture and let the scripture speak for itself. Okay. Eisegesis is where we have a bias going in, where we already have a preconceived notion of, oh, I'm looking for a verse to where Jesus changed the Sabbath, or he executed his authority over the Sabbath, so that way I can satisfy my need for wanting to live lawlessly or something like that, right? And because you can always find whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for the truth, you'll find the truth. You'll find the Shabbat, the feasts, the commandments, all that stuff. But if you're looking for whatever just satisfies your itching ears, you'll also find it, right? And that's the double-edged sword that is the word. So that's what exegesis is, right? But the way it's explained in the Hebrew versus the Greek. So the Greek Western mindset is a linear mindset, which has one interpretation. Okay. It just, hey, oh, that means this, and you move on, and everything's linear, everything's left to right, and there's no differential of anything. There's no difference, right? Everything's in chronological order. The Hebraic mindset is a layered mindset, and it's based upon the easiest way to say it, it's a cyclical mindset as well. So it goes layer upon layer, which is hinted to in Isaiah 28, verse 10 and 13. It talks about line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, right? But it's layered. So it's like Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. Like, you have the cycles of the feasts, you have the cycles of the Shabbat, and then you have the cycles of the day. So we go day to day, we go Shabbat to Shabbat, we go feast to feast, we go to year, right? Similar to that. So anyway, let me get into this. So PaRDeS is a acronym for the Peshat, the Remez, the Drash, and the Sod. All right, so the Peshat is on the surface level, very straightforward, very literal. It's a direct meaning. Okay, this is typically what you'll find in the Greek Western mindset. It's just very literal, very, direct, is what they're looking for. A remez is a hint or the deep allegoric, hidden, or symbolic meaning beyond just the literal sense. The drash is to inquire, right? So Psalm 27, verse 4, what does David talk about? This one thing I have desired of Yahweh, that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of Yahweh all the days of my life, to behold his beauty and to inquire in his temple. What does Yahusha say? Matthew 7:7, ask and you shall have, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open. So this is what we're talking about here, right? Because and I've been reading Proverbs this month, so 25th chapter today. Proverbs 25 verse 2, it says it's the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search out a matter. All right, and we're called to be kings and priests under the order of Melchizedek, and so we're called to search out. We're called to come and play hide and seek with the Most High. That's what he truly desires. He just wants to have some fun with his children. That's what I put it up to. Okay, so then it's given through similar occurrences, and then the Sod. So the Sod is the deep secrets. Okay, Daniel 2:22. I could pull that up for us. We could look at that. If I could even find it. There we go. So Daniel 2:22 says, he, talking about Yahweh, reveals deep secret matters, and he knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells in him. So, he doesn't just he doesn't cast pearls among swine, right? And that's why he tells us and warns us not to do it as well. You have to press in. The crowds, if you look all throughout the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all throughout the Gospels, the crowds received the parables, okay? The disciples, they pressed in for the hidden meaning behind the parables. And we're called to be disciples. That's what we're here to do. That's what this group, this platform is all about. The mystery of Melchizedek is to discover what does it mean to live out this lifestyle in 2022, or so they say that's the year, right? So let's look at a meaning here. Just kind of giving you an example. I might not hit all of these, so bear with me, but I would just challenge you to take a look at, using this formula and look at, different stories, different parables and things like that, and look at, okay, is this actually talking about a temple, or is there a deeper spiritual meaning behind it? Things like that, right? So let's look at the parable of the wedding feast real quick from Matthew 22. It says, and Yahushua responded and spoke to them again by parables, and said, which Matthew 13 tells you why he speaks to them by parables. So that's a big hint. The kingdom of heaven is like a man, a king, who made a wedding feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying to those who were invited, see, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen, my fatted calf are slaughtered, all is ready, come to the wedding feast. But they disregarded it. They went their way, this one to his field, that one to his trade, and the rest, having seized his servants, insulted and killed them. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth, and sent out his soldiers and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who are invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the corners, the street corners, and as many as you find, invite them to the wedding feast. And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. And when the sovereign came to view the guests, he saw there was a man there who had not put on a wedding garment. And he said to him, friend, how did you come here not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then the king said to his servants, bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him out into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. So let's break down, obviously he's not talking about, he said the kingdom of heaven is like a wedding feast, right? So it's a simile, right? It's a parable. So obviously he's not talking about, which there is a wedding feast, don't get me wrong, that's what Sukkot is all about, that's what the marriage supper of the Lamb is all about. But who are the participants here? So you have the king in Yahweh, you have his son in the revealed Yahweh, Yahushua. You have the servants. Well, the servants can represent both messengers, as in angels, and also prophets. The scripture speaks to servants in Amos 3:7, that he reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets, right? The busy RSVPs, meaning the people who are too busy to come to the feast, they can represent the unfaithful harlot of Mystery Babylon, the foolish virgins who have no oil, or divorced Yisrael who has not been regrafted in to the olive tree, right? So this is what we're talking about here. So these servants, and also this part where it says that the servants, he's talking about the multiple times where he sent to the house of Israel and the house of Judah his servants, the prophets, to call them back into the wedding banquet, into the wedding feast, to come back into the covenant, to quit committing harlotry and straying with these other gods and everything like that. And what did they do? They disregarded it. They went their way into their field, to his trade. But the rest, see, he's actually referencing here the prophets that were actually slain by Israel, by the house of Judah, you know, like Zechariah. Zechariah was actually slain in the temple itself, between the porch and the altar. There was many different prophets who, because let's be real, when a prophet speaks, it's the truth. You don't want to hear it. That's why Stephen was stoned, is because it says that their hearts were cut deeply and their teeth gnashed at him, you know, because there was such hatred for what he was saying to them, right? And then what happened? Well, right here he's talking about the different captures and sieges of Jerusalem that have taken place. And also, I think that he was actually giving them a warning of what was to take place in 40 years later with 70 AD and the complete destruction of Jerusalem during 70 AD, you know? And then also, well, okay, if we're looking at this literally, or in the Peshat, right? Is it an actual wedding garment that this person doesn't have on? You know, the king. So the king comes to view the guests. So, you know, is he actually just viewing the guests, or is he actually coming to examine the people's hearts, you know, and give each man according to his works, you know, reward each man according to his works? And he saw there a man who had not put on a wedding garment. Well, was it actually a wedding garment? Or is it the garments of righteousness? You know, is it that pure, spotless white garment, which represents, see, our best, you know, in all of our, you know, most righteous things that we can do is nothing but filthy rags, the Apostle Paul says. So we have to make the exchange. You know, if you actually look at the book of Zechariah in chapter 3, it actually shows a piece there about Yahusha having dirty garments on as the priest. Why are his garments dirty? Because he's exchanged them with us. He's taken on our sicknesses, our burdens, our sin, Isaiah 53 talks about, and he exchanges it with us, right? So what happened here is the man entered, or tried to enter into the kingdom upon his own righteousness. He never made the exchange, the garment exchange. That's what he's talking about here, you know? So anyway, that's just a quick example of the PaRDeS, okay? The Peshat, the Remez, the Drash, and the Sod, okay? But it's there all throughout, where, you know, there are multifaceted meanings all throughout Scripture, and that's one of the biggest things I've been learning in the past 3 years, since well, I guess almost 3.5 years or something like that, since coming out of the church, is, man, the Hebraic mindset is key to developing and getting away from that Greek Western mindset. Okay, so let's move on here. All right. So now you understand, you know, you're probably thinking maybe a little bit like, well, why are we talking about PaRDeS, right? I thought we were talking about winter feasts. I thought we were talking about, you know, the 3 winter feasts of Yom Teruah, you know, the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, several of the examples that we're going to look at here in the Book of the Covenant are not literal. They're not on the surface. They don't come right out and say it was the Feast of Passover, it was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, etc. There are several examples where the feasts are just hinted at or made reference to by a certain word or phrase. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So Passover. So have you ever thought about that the sacrifice of Isaac, or I should say, it shouldn't say the sacrifice of Isaac, it should say the attempted sacrifice of Isaac, right? But that would be around the time of Passover? Well, let's look at it. it says in Genesis 22 here, and it came to be after these events that Elohim tried or tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am, take your son, your only son, Yitzchak, or Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on the mountains which I command you. Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his men with him, and Yitzchak his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering, arose and went to the place which Elohim commanded him. And on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place from a distance. So Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey while the boy and I go over there and worship and come back. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Yitzchak his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. And Yitzchak spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, Elohim does provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. And the 2 of them went together. So we can see here, and obviously if you keep reading the story, obviously he almost sacrifices his son. The messenger of Yahweh comes and interrupts him. And then he looks up and he sees the ram. He sees the ram in the thicket, caught in the thicket. Well, Brother Matthew has a wonderful teaching. I think it's called Yahusha's Untimely Death, I want to say it is, where he breaks this down, where, just like that ram was caught in the acacia tree, in the thorns, that the lamb of Yahweh that takes away the sins of the world, would have an acacia tree crown of thorns all around his head. And that's what was placed upon his head. And the lamb was provided. Now, when was the lamb provided? Because, again, Matthew's touched on this several times, but the Passover lamb was actually slain, not the one in Exodus 12, but I'm talking about we're talking about Yahusha here. But the Passover lamb was slain from the foundation of the world. And we get this reference from Revelation 13:8. It says, and all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life, of the slain lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him. It's talking about worshiping the beast. Everybody's going to worship the beast unless your name has been written in the Lamb's book of life from who was the slain lamb from the foundation of the world. Okay, so this is an allegoric reference to Passover right here, because obviously the instances here where we look at John 3:16, right? For Yahweh so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Abraham was also ready to give his only begotten son, right? His only son as a sacrifice, just like Yahweh was willing to give as well, right? So you can see the correlations there. Okay, so let's keep going. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, excuse me, is actually referenced or mentioned in the account of Sodom and Gomorrah. So we can look at Sodom and Gomorrah here in Genesis 19. Genesis 19, it says, and 2 messengers came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when Lot saw them, he rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, and he said, look, please, my masters, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night, wash your feet, rise early, and go your way. And they said, no, but let us spend the night in the open square. But he urged them strongly, and they turned to him, came into his house. And he made them a feast, baked unleavened bread, and they ate. So the question is, why else would they be having unleavened bread unless this was during the time of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a 7-day long feast, which which is married to the Feast of Pesach, the Feast of Passover, and then is for 7 days they eat unleavened bread. This is mentioned in the book of Exodus, right? So, and if you have questions, just hang on them until we get to the end, and then we'll definitely get to them. So jot them down. So let's keep moving on here. And then another reference to this is the phrase "on the very same day." Okay. Well, in Genesis 15, verse 18 through 21, says, "On that same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given you this land to your seed from the river of Mitzrayim, Egypt, to the great river, the river Euphrates, with the Canaanite, the Kizanite, the Canaanite, Hittite, Perizzite, Rephaim, Amorite, Canaanite, Girgashite, and Jebusite." And a mixed multitude went, and then fast forward. So it's on that day. It's on that same day. Well, what day, 430 years later, during the Exodus, did they leave on? They left on the first day of unleavened bread. Exodus 12:38. "And a mixed multitude went up with them as well, also flocks and herds and very much livestock, and they baked unleavened cakes of dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Mitzrayim and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves. And the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Mitzrayim was 430 years." Now, it's actually not 430 years. You can look at the genealogy. The Masoretic text says 430 years. It was not 430 years. It was 430 years from the time that Abraham received the promise in Genesis 15 to the time of the Exodus. That part was 430 years. But the actual exile or enslavement in Mitzrayim was 210 years. This is very easily tracked when you go through the genealogy. You'll see that it's just impossible that it was 430 years. Okay, and it came to be at the end of 430 years, on that same day. There's that phrase. So it's on that same day that Abraham received the promise from the Father, and 430 years later, it came to be that all divisions of Yahweh went out from the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, so there we have that. First fruits. Could it be that even all the way back as far as Cain and Abel, that they were keeping the feast of first fruit, the feast of first fruits? Let's look. So it says, "And it came to be in the course of time that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Yahweh. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock of their fat, And Yahweh looked to Abel in his offering, but to Cain, he did not look to Cain in his offering. And Cain was very wroth, and his face fell." Well, let's just look real quick at the Feast of First Fruits. Okay, so Leviticus 23 is your biggest source of where you can find information on the feast. Now, I like using the eSword. I like using the Scriptures 1998 version because, as you can see, it breaks up the headings here. You have the Sabbath, you have the Passover, you have First Fruits, you have the Feast of Weeks or Shavuot, you have Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and you have the Feast of Booths or Sukkot. Right? So let's look at the Feast of First Fruits. So what were they supposed to do? "And speak to the children of Israel, And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. You shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, you shall reap its harvest, and then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for your acceptance. On the morning after the Sabbath, the priest waves it." Okay? "And when you wave the sheaf, that you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as a burnt offering to Yahweh." Okay? So we can see that what is Abel doing here? Abel's bringing the firstborn brought a firstborn of his flock to Yahweh as an offering. So is this possibly a reference to the Feast of First Fruits all the way back in Genesis 4? Okay, again, and I should have prefaced this before, is that, you know, this is something we have to examine and see that it's so together. I'm not saying that this is exactly what's taking place, but what I'm saying is I'm asking questions. That's what we're asking questions together. Is this what was taking place, right? Because we know that the within the book of the covenant, within that covenant, Exodus 19:8 through Exodus 24:11, the three pilgrimage feasts are mentioned. The when Passover's married to unleavened bread, so we know that that's included. But the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Shavuot, and the Feast of Sukkot. Within the Feast of Unleavened Bread, though, you would have the Feast of First Fruits. So, and also we know that they were keeping the covenant, the Torah of Yahweh, even though it wasn't written down until Mount Sinai, until Exodus 20:19 and 20, where Moshe wrote it down. But Moshe recorded all of Genesis. He recorded the creation of the world. He recorded Noah's flood. He recorded all these different things, right? That's what he did, okay? So now here's a couple of unknown feasts, and maybe some of you know, maybe you have more information on these, but it says in Genesis 17, verse 20, but my covenant I will establish with Yitzhak, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this set time next year. Now, if you go and look in the Hebrew there of set time in this translation, it's moed, it's feast, okay? It's the same time as Genesis 18:14, is any matter too hard for Yahweh? At the appointed time or feast, I am going to return to you according to the time of life. Sarah is going to have a son, he says in the next chapter, okay? Now, Brother Matthew touched on this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, in his, I believe it was the Taruma Torah portion, where he got into how Adam and Eve in the garden were clothed in light, okay? They were clothed in garments of light, which is why they were able to actually interact and live and cohabitate with Yahweh, right? Because we know that he is surrounded in inapproachable light. But let's read the account here in Genesis 3, okay? And we'll move on. So Yom Kippur, does Yom Kippur go all the way back to Adam and Eve? Let's look. Genesis 3:1, and the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made, and said to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst or the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. Which was not true. It did not say, do not touch it. She already added to the word right there. It said, do not eat of it, though, right? Verse 4, and the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for Elohim knows the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened. You should be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. The woman saw that the tree was good for food. It was pleasant to the eyes, a desirable tree to make one wise, and she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband, and he ate. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. So now they realized, because their countenance had changed. They were no longer clothed in garments of light, but now they were standing there naked, unclothed, with fleshly garments on. Fleshly garments now. Their garments of light had disappeared, right? They had transfigured, but not in a good way. And they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking about in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and Eve and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh among the trees of the garden. And Yahweh called unto Adam and said to him, where are you? And he said, I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who made you known that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you should not eat? And the man said, the woman you gave me to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, nahash me, and I ate. Nasha me, and I ate. And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed in all the livestock, all the beasts of the field, and on your belly you shall go to eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. We know this is the first reference of the promised Messiah there, right? But if you jump down to verse 21 all the way down, it says, and Yahweh Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them. So this is the first reference here of, and Matthew was talking about this, like I said, in his Teruma teaching from 2 weeks ago, of Yom Kippur. There's a slaughtering taking place. A sacrifice has to be made. There has to be a penalty paid in order to make these coats of skin to clothe Adam and his wife, right? A temporary covering. That's what Yom Kippur is about. It's a temporary covering. And the Day of Atonement is how Yahweh brings us back into at-one-ment with him, between him and mankind. Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so the three feasts that we're going to cover tonight, real briefly, okay, is the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Sukkot. Okay. Now, the Feast of Trumpets, again, Leviticus 23, verse 23, it says, Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you have a rest, a remembrance of blowing of trumpets, a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. Okay? So what is the Feast of Trumpets about? Well, the Feast of Trumpets is yet to be fulfilled. Okay, this is what the 7 trumpets in the book of Revelation are all about. This is what the great shout of the archangel in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16 and 17. This is what this is all about. It's the announcement of the king. The king is coming. Okay, because the master himself shall come down from heaven with a shout. Teruah, that's what Teruah, Yom Teruah, that's what it's called. The day of shouting, I think is what it stands for. With the voice of the chief messenger and with the trumpet of Elohim, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we, the living who are left over, shall be caught away together with them in the clouds to meet the master in the air, and we shall always be with the master. Okay, this is what the Feast of Trumpets is all about. So when we celebrate the Feast of Trumpets, we are shouting, we are announcing to this evil world, we are announcing to Egypt, we are announcing to Mystery Babylon that, hey, you can do all this to us, you can enslave us, you can give us all these different mandates, but we want to let it be known today that our king is coming. He's coming, and he's going to judge you, and he's going to set us free from this evil place, right? So it's that announcement. It's the same with the announcement in Matthew 25, the wise and the foolish virgin man, right? It says, hang on. Oh, right here. verse 6, and it says, "And a midnight cry was heard. The bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him." Right? This is the announcement. Okay, that's how they would do it in the Hebraic customs. Is they would announce the bridegroom is coming. That's again on earth as it is in heaven, right? That's the theme. So the Feast of Trumpets is very important to announce to the world who your king is and that he's coming, right? Yom Kippur, we talked about this, but a little bit, but Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, okay? It's on the 10th day of the 7th month. This is the Day of Atonement. It's a set-apart gathering. You shall afflict your beings or your soul. You shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. You shall do no work on the same day, for it is the Day of Atonement, to make atonement or at-one-ment for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day should be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that day, I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. So the Day of Atonement was a day of bloodshed, right? The Day of Atonement, the way I see it, and I actually did I think it was either last year or it might have been the year before, we actually did a series, a short 3-part series on the Day of Atonement, or on Feast of Trumpets, on the Day of Atonement, and on the Feast of Sukkot, and how it's tied to the whole wedding ceremony and the consummation of the marriage and the wedding feast and all that, and the wedding ceremony or wedding reception and all that stuff. But the Day of Atonement is actually the consummation of the marriage, okay? Because what would happen is and this is why Yahushua says, if you believe in Yahweh, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. And I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I shall come again to bring you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. It's Hebraic wedding custom talk here, is what he's referencing. So what would happen is during a betrothal, which the betrothal happens at Shavuot. That's when the bride's chosen, at Shavuot. And the betrothal was different than an engagement. The betrothal was where you were actually legally married to one another. You were betrothed. That's what Joseph and Miriam had, when Yahushua was found in her womb, that she was with child and all that stuff. They were betrothed, right? So what would happen, though, is when they were betrothed, the man would go to his father's house and build on in addition to his father's house. And then when his father deemed him ready, usually it took about a year to do so, he would go and say to his son, go and get your wife, go and get your bride. And then what he would do is he would come with the friend of the bridegroom, which represented the best man and the wedding party and everything like that. And they would announce that the king is coming, or not the king, but the bridegroom is coming, right? Which we know represents our king. But they would announce that the bridegroom is coming. Yom Teruah, announcing that the bridegroom is coming. Then he would enter in, or he would bring his bride back to the house that he added on to, and they would consummate the marriage right then. Okay. And then it would, and they even had, proof. I'll just say it that way. Okay. And that blood is the proof. Okay. Just like the blood of atonement, when Yahushua appeared to Miriam in John chapter 20 as the gardener, and he said, when she recognized him finally and said, "Oh, Rabboni, teacher, it's you." And she goes to, approach him and embrace him. And he says, "You can't touch me. Don't touch me, for I have not ascended to my Father." He had not placed his pure, spotless blood yet on the Yom Kippur altar of heaven, which would atone for the sins of mankind and pay this penalty once and for all, which is what the book of Hebrews is all about. You know, what was it? Hebrews 8, 1 through 15, and Hebrews chapter 9 this morning, which was part of our Torah portion, it literally talking about this. You know, that Yom Kippur, they had to go in there, and that was the only time that the high priest, the one person, could go in there into the Holy of Holies, or the Kodashim of Kodashim, was on Yom Kippur. And there were so many different traditions and washings that they had to go through in order to get in there. And then that was the only day that they could go in there, right, and approach. And they did this on a yearly basis. A yearly basis they would do this. And they had to make sacrifices on their behalf for their sins, and then they would make sacrifices on behalf of the sins of Israel. But Yahusha came and paid this sacrifice once and for all. He entered into the Holy of Holies, into that inapproachable light, and he put his blood on that altar. That's what Yom Kippur is about. It's the actual wedding day. It's the marriage. It's the consummation of marriage. See, what is going to happen on Yom Kippur, you know, these 10 days of awe, it's known as, is that most likely how it's going to take place is as he comes, gets his bride, boom, takes her out of the way, you know, protects her, then his messengers start pouring out, you know, these bowls of wrath. So it's a severing, it's a separation. This is my bride, I'm married to her, all others are being judged. You know, it's tied to what is known as the day of the Lord, or, you know, the day of Yahweh, right? And then lastly, you have the Feast of Sukkot, or the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles, right? Which actually there's a reference to a place called Sukkot in Genesis 33. We won't go there, but that was a little freebie there, okay? But Leviticus 23:33 says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month is the festival of booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days to Yahweh. On the first day, it's a set-apart gathering. So the first and the 7th day are book-in 7-part gatherings, just like the first and last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread as well. But you do no work for 7 days. You bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day, there should be a set-apart gathering for you. You shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh as a closing festival. You shall do no work. These are the appointed times, or the moeds, of Yahweh, which you proclaim as set-apart gatherings. The bleeding offering made by fire, burnt offering, grain offering, slaughtering, lots of offerings. Now we offer up our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto him, right? We offer a sacrifice of praise is what we offer now, right? But Sukkot represents the actual wedding reception, because again, you would have the consummation, you'd have the betrothal, okay? You'd have the betrothal stage. Then the bridegroom would come and get his bride. They would consummate the marriage because they're already actually married legally in the ketubah that they've signed, the covenant that they've signed together. And then the actual wedding reception, or the marriage supper, would take place after the consummation. It's the same thing on earth as it is in heaven. Sukkot represents the marriage supper of the Lamb. The Revelation 19. This is what it's all about: is going to the marriage supper of the Lamb. This is what Matthew 22 is all about: the wedding feast, right? Coming to the wedding feast, or being too busy to come to the wedding feast. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. And the last great day that it talks about here in the Feast of Sukkot is the millennial reign, where where we will rest in him, where we will be in his presence, where we will be with him for all of eternity, right? So these are how these feasts, really tie in together as far as their deeper meaning. Some of here when they actually take place. Obviously, the 7th month is loaded with 3 feasts. I mean, you have the feast of you have the feast of Yom Teruah, you have the feast of the Day of Atonement, and you have the feast of Sukkot, all within the 7th month, right? You have the first day for the Feast of Trumpets, you have the 10th day for Yom Kippur, and you have the 15th day, beginning the 15th day for the Feast of Sukkot. So anyway, hope that makes sense now. What PaRDeS means, references to, we can see how, one thing he was showing me this week as well is that, Jeremiah, I think it's 31 or 33, talks about how he will write the law on the tablets of our heart, right? How it's not about the tablets of stone, but it's about the tablets of our heart. Well, where was the law? One thing he was showing me this week is, where was the law? Where was the Torah? Where was my covenant written before it was written down? It was written on their hearts. So it's all going back to the way he originally designed it, which was not about what happened at Mount Sinai to have it written on tablets of stone, but just like Matthew was talking about a couple of weeks ago, the tablets of our heart, and how our heart is split in half to look like 2 tablets, right? And it's what it's about. What is on our heart is what it's all about. Well, we can see hints and references and sewed instances where it is highly possible that they were keeping the feasts. Some of these are more obvious than others, obviously, right? But it is highly possible that they were already keeping the feasts back in the book of Genesis, long before Mount Sinai ever took place. So hopefully this was edifying and uplifting to you guys. And in closing, Yahuwah bless you, keep you, make his face shine upon you, lift up his countenance towards you, and give you peace and shalom.
And shalom. Thank you, brother Brandon. Very good, very good. We see so many hints there, from the sacrifice of Isaac, and that being seen, alludes to the Passover, the lamb. It can also allude to the ram, right? The rams that was sacrificed in the Day of Atonement as well. So I mean, but that's very, very, very good. During that 7th month, it's very significant because, as we all know, there's 2 equinoxes per year, and one starts the winter season, and the other one starts the summer season. And that blow of the trumpet, or the blast of the trumpet, the teruah, in Hebrew mindset, there's a saying called Ayom Harat Alam, which means the birth of the world. And they always reference that to Yom Teruah. The very first day of creation was blasted out from the voice of Yahuwah. The very first word of creation, let there be light. And and it connects like to that equinox, to the light of the world, who is Yahushua. And so it's all very nicely connected. We see that Yahuwah's feasts and the works of his hands are cyclical. So we see the shadows and the pictures and all of that all throughout Scripture, over and over and over. And if we recognize these things out, then we can definitely know the times that he wants us to, and when we're supposed to celebrate this feast. And I think we're doing our best to do that.
Yeah,
So
I totally agree.
Yeah. All right, well, I think it's time for possibly questions or comments. And yes, I think, Owen, you had a question, I think, during Brandon's teaching.
Yes.
You're like, you're about to.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
First of all, I want to thank him for that powerful teaching. Praise Yahuwah. A few years back, when I was in Florida, when I was attending a church there, a synagogue, I brought it up to the pastor's attention that while I was reading Genesis 18, I noticed it was verse 6, Genesis 6, where it spoke about, Abraham having Sarah make 3 measures of fine meal kneaded and make cakes upon the earth. And that didn't strike anything to me until I read the following chapter in verse 19, where brother Brandon picked up that they was making unleavened bread. And I thought to myself, I'm like, why would they mention the details? I'm like, because I know the Almighty don't just fill space with empty words. And I'm like, wait a second, it had to have been the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then I saw on verse 19, I think it was verse 1, no, chapter 19, verse 1, it said that it was even, and his feast days, start even. And the verse in chapter 18, it said that time frame that that he's seen Abraham was in an even time, or in the daytime. I just thought those details was hard to miss and hard to look over. And when I brought it to his attention, he looked at me and told me that, you know what, you're reading too much into it. The feast days didn't start until Moses. You're wrong. And that pretty much discouraged me from even going further. And I want to add this one thing too. I was reading on the account of the flood, and the dates that was mentioned, I believe that either one of them, I don't know which date, but it overlapped it with one of the feast days. When the flood, when the waters was being dried up.
Yeah, I'm trying to because I think it came to rest in the 10th month, I want to say, but I'm trying to.
But I didn't know too much, so
I think it came to rest. I can't think it came to rest on the 7th month. I think it was Shavuot.
It was during Shavuot, yeah.
Sukkot, excuse me, Sukkot.
Yeah, you're right. 7th month.
Oh yeah, right there.
That was a
14th day or something.
Though. And when that only confirmed that that I was at least on the right path. That wasn't crazy.
Yeah. No, you weren't crazy, not at all.
Yeah, everything centered around the feast. Everything in the Gospels is centered around the Sabbath and the feast. If you look at it.
Yeah,
I want to mention to Brother Brendan that you know how I like to write a little here and there on Facebook.
Yeah,
you walked all over what my message I was working on.
I what?
You walked all over a message that I was walking, because you used like 3 of the scriptures I wanted to use.
Oh, that's all right. You can still use it, buddy. It's okay. No worries.
All right.
No, and it's really, it's good that you mentioned that, and that's how you know that you are Yisrael, because you've been grafted in, and you had a desire to keep his commands, you had a desire to keep his Shabbat, you had a desire to keep his feasts and everything. And we've been in the nations, we've been learning the pagan ways and stuff like that as part of our ancestors' punishment. 2,700 years ago, that the northern tribes of Israel were cast into the nations, and it's Israel's awakening, that those dry bones, Ezekiel saw just a valley of dry bones, and he said, Yahweh said to him, son of man, can these bones live? And he said, only you know. And he said, son of man, prophesy to those dry bones. And what does it mean to prophesy? It means to speak forth the word of Yahweh and speak it into existence, to say those things that are not as though they were, and that's what it's all about is, and that's what Yahusha came for, is he came to seek and save the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yes.
It's not about the church. It's not about Christianity, the pagan syncretism that we have there. It's about Israel. The entire Bible was written for Israel, by Israel, and it's about Israel.
Yes.
And it's about the God of Israel. And when you're in Christianity, and especially if you're in the pre-tribulation rapture theory, you're literally thinking he can come any second, any minute, because no one knows the day or the hour. Oh, well, wait a minute, time out. When you learn that no one knows the day or the hour because it's a Hebrew idiom for the Feast of Trumpets, because no one knows the day or the hour of that, oh, now things all change. Because he's not going to operate, like Don said, everything revolves around the feast because the feasts revolve around him. I mean, the first four first 4 feasts, are about his death, burial, resurrection, and his ascension. That's the first 4 feasts. The last 3 feasts are about his announcement of the kingdom, or the kingdom coming, the 7 trumpets, the 7th trumpet blast, the sound of the archangel, the kingdom of heaven coming to earth, the wedding day, the consummation of the marriage, him treading, that's part of him treading the winepress is at that wedding day. That's Isaiah 63, because the day of his wrath has come, because he's like, y'all have mistreated my bride long enough, come after her long enough, like I've had enough of this. And he's dashing the nations, and he saw no one else doing it, so he does it himself, it says in Isaiah 63, which is repeated in Revelation 14, but it says, who is this coming up from Edom with garments of glowing colors from Bozrah, whose robed in splendor, striding forward in greatness of his strength? It is I who speak in Zedekiah righteousness, mighty to save. Why is there red on your garment? Your garments are like one who treads in the winepress. I have trodden the winepress alone from the peoples. No one was with me. And I trod them down in my displeasure. I trampled them in my wrath. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled my raiment. For a day of vengeance is in my heart. The year of my redeemed has come. The year of his bride. The year of coming to get and coming to rescue his bride. And I looked that there was none helping, and I was astonished that there was none upholding. But my own arm saved for me. Who's his arm? Yahusha. Isaiah 53 shows us that. And my wrath upheld me, and I trod the peoples down in my displeasure, made them drunk in my wrath, and brought down their strength to the earth. This is all what Yom Kippur is about. And Sister Tracy, she posted Psalm 91 is that the bride is under his covering. That's what he's been showing me the past 2 years, is that if you want his covering, get into his covenant. It's a marital position. You take, underneath the shadow of his wings. If you take a kanaf, if you take a prayer shawl, you take a talit, those wings are known as a kanaf and in Hebrew. And what would happen is during a Hebrew ceremony, a wedding ceremony, the bridegroom would stand there over with his bride and cover her with the kanaf right next to him. That's what Psalm 91 is about. But see, the issue is that we don't want to walk in his covenant. We want to have the convenience of the gospel save me from the pits of hell, save me from my sin, save me from the kings of the earth, from the new world order, from the mark of the beast, save me from it, but I don't want the conviction of the gospel. Because the conviction comes because it's not a burden to live in covenant. I mean, there's many married people on here. Is it a burden to live in covenant of marriage? No. We're not trying to bring you back under the law. Heaven forbid. We're trying to bring you back into the covenant, the same covenant that Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived under. That Abraham believed and it was accounted to him as righteousness. That's what we're talking about here, because it's a position. If you want the blessings of Psalm 91, if you don't want to be afraid of the arrow that flies by night, which could soon be happening, or the pestilence that walks at noonday and all that stuff that happens, and I'm probably misquoting that, but you know what I'm talking about. If you want the promises, then you have to walk in his covenant. That's just how it goes. And his covenant is deemed on his terms. It's not deemed on ours. And that's why we keep the Shabbat. That's why we obey the commandments. That's why we observe the feast. That's why we do the dietary requirements. That's why we have the testimony of Yahusha, because we want to live in covenant with him. Why would someone allow you, if a king has a kingdom and you don't live by the king's commands, you don't live by the king's rules, why would he allow you to remain in his kingdom? If someone is to marry someone forever, be married to them forever, rule and reign with them forever, give them up to half of their kingdom, like it talks about, why would he do that if you don't want to come underneath his rules, underneath his guidelines, underneath his commandments? This is where the gospel gets very skewed. This is where it gets very skewed. And Christianity is teaching another gospel. And the Apostle Paul in Galatians chapter 1, I think it's verse 9, says, let him be accursed who is teaching another gospel. Because yes, the milk is Christ crucified. Don't get me wrong, it is. That is the milk. But the meat of the word is understanding the deeper meanings of the Hebraic mindset and understanding the covenants of promise. That's what it's about. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet. Jay has a question or a comment. Go ahead, brother.
Hey, brothers. First of all, thank you for your teaching again. Absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. It was amazing. Just coming back to the Feast of Trumpets, I thought that too, that we didn't know the hour or the day, or you know what day it was, but in Leviticus 23:23 it says, and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Yasharel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath and a memorial of blowing shofars. So that's the day of trumpets, is it not?
Oh yeah, it is. I was just saying that that's what the Christians reference. You know, they say, oh, well, no one knows the day or the hour. You know, he can come tomorrow, he can come next week, whatever, but they don't realize that it was a Hebrew idiom for the Feast of Trumpets, because, and the reason why is, I guess I didn't clarify that part, so I apologize. So appreciate your question. But, you know, the reason why is some calendars, they actually keep it off of the sliver of the moon. So they wouldn't know when that day would be, but also it works for the equinox or the Tekufa as well, because until we see that no shadow of turning that Jose and I have done a lot of teachings about, until we see that straight line on that sundial being created, then we know that the next day is the Feast of Trumpets, right? But until we see that, we don't know, you know, the day or the hour that it's actually going to occur until it's actually occurring. So either way, whether you use the moon or whether you use a solar-based calendar, it still works around around the Feast of Trumpets. So I was just stating that Christians are literally, you know, for I don't even know how long, they've been saying, oh, he could come in any minute, blah, blah, blah. And then the whole Left Behind thing and, you know, the dispensationalism and all that craziness, you know, it all goes in there. But when we understand the feasts, and we understand that the feasts are not just for the Jews, that the Jews are just one tribe out of 12 tribes, and also that the orange juice over there are Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 for the most part, at least the ones in charge, you know, and that, you know, a lot of history's been changed and all that kind of stuff. When we understand these feasts, that's when we understand Yahweh's prophetic timeline and how, you know, okay, the first 4 feasts are about what he's already done, what Yahushua's already done, and the 3 feasts coming yet to be fulfilled are what he's about to do, you know. So that's a big factor, you know, that Christianity is missing out on. Honestly, it's a big, beautiful piece of the gospel. You know, it's to understand that, hey, he's an Elohim of order, not disorder, right? So that's all I was referring to about the no one knows the day or the hour thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. Thank you. Brother Don?
Hey, I love you, brother. It was good teaching. Yeah, I just want to add to that, what you said earlier, because you understanding, which we probably all understand, that the the real reason Yahushua came wasn't just to die on the cross, like you were talking, just die for our sins, because he was that lamb who died for the foundation of the world, but he came to pay the death penalty of that golden calf breach. Like Matthew was talking in his last teach about, he came for that visitation. You know, we were talking about it earlier before recording, but he came to, Moses who broker, Moses who was that mediator, was a great mediator, like Matthew was saying, for this visitation. Yahushua comes and they reject it, but it didn't keep him from doing his mission, what his purpose was, which was to bring up the Melchizedek, the priesthood, as when he became that Melchizedek high priest. And understanding that the book of the law and the book of the covenant, that's why it's so important to understand that. But as far as, let's see, in the church, we were taught, like Matthew was talking, it was all about senses, feelings, that concept. We all came out of the church or Messianic or something. Maybe some of us didn't, but as far as I did, but I know I was touched in there, but it was all, everything's all outward. We can't understand the Melchizedek covenant. You got to come out of this concept about being everything done in the feelings, and you got to see it to believe, into this faith where we realize who his name is, that Yahushua is Elohim. Yahushua is the revealed Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He is Elohim. He is the Son of Elohim, and we are sons and daughters of him through faith and belief, and we just have to trust. And it's something that he's got to reveal. And but it's not about, it's about obedience to this covenant, like you were saying. This covenant Yah has given us. As we walk this out obediently in the natural, he reveals in the spirit. We cycle this feast. It's like the circumcision of our heart. Yah is cutting away that flesh on our heart.
Right.
As people make fun of us, as people call us cult leaders, they call us all kinds of things. Because you stand firm for it, like Matthew said in his teaching, you either stand or that was it. Yeah, you go back to it. And we've stood, and some of us more than, what I'm saying? Some of us have been through a lot more than, but hallelujah, Yah's bringing us all into the same hour, whether we've been an hour doing this or whether we've been doing this 12 hours, we all get the same equality, we all get the same pay, and I'm happy with it. That's Yahushua. We all get the same pay, brothers and sisters. And that's we just got to be faithful to covenant. Yeah. We got to walk this out in the natural. That's what circumcises our heart. As you walk this out in cycles, it does this. And that what is the heart of the flesh? What's the heart of the soul? It's the outward flesh. It's feeding this flesh. That's the heart that gets circumcised. It's outward flesh. And as this outward flesh gets circumcised, these things that we're dealing with, and it's how we clean these cup out. That's circumcising the heart. That's letting the spirit and that's releasing the light. That's releasing the light. It's the garden. we're going back to that spirit, soul, and body, and yeah. Anyway, I just want to share that. It's good stuff, brother. I want to, yeah, you know what I'm saying? We got to walk this. We just have to be faithful to covenant. And I tell you what, sometimes it's a choice. It's all a choice, of course, but and sometimes you just have to stand. When you stand in covenant, well, you don't have to do anything else. Everything will flee. When the light is shine, when you shine a light in the dark, either all the roaches scatter, all the lizards go back on the rocks, but and we're able to see clearly. But anyway, yeah.
I was gonna say, in addition to the circumcision of the flesh that takes place as we go through the feast and everything, I think about it as as the wine press and also the threshing floor, because we're either crushed now voluntarily and we produce pure oil and we become that wheat that is sifted and we don't blow away like the chaff blown away, or we're crushed involuntarily, but everyone's going to be crushed. So like if you think about like a big I don't know if it's a wine press or a threshing floor, it might be used for both, but it's a big stone and it has like a trough all the way around it. You would have the substance in, and then it has a huge wheel in it, a huge stone, and we know that, Yahushua crushes us, this life crushes us. And, as we go from day to day, from Shabbat to Shabbat, from feast to feast, from cycle to cycle, yearly, he's changing us. This is what Paul was talking about. We go from glory to glory because he's refining us in this refiner's fire. And as he, makes another lap, as we read through another cycle of the Torah portions, we learn something new. We see something different. We're looking at things differently on the inside, and we're seeing it more and more. And,
Amen.
One of my favorite things about the Teruma Torah portions, probably one of my favorite ones, is that when Matthew talks about how that, to produce the pure oil for the lamp, in order for our lamp not to go out, which was represented in the menorah, the 7 lampstands that's talked about in the book of Revelation. But he talked about that the flesh of the olive has to be completely crushed. And in order for us to produce the pure oil, to be able to trim our lamps, to be one of the wise virgins at his return, and not allow our lampstand to be snuffed out in any way, shape, or form, and no one to steal our crown, we have to allow our flesh to be completely crushed. We have to allow that to happen in order for us to produce that pure, clear oil, which is developed in that place of prayer, in intimacy. And the same thing with the wheat, that process of going from the barley, that carnal nature, that carnal fleshly nature, and becoming wheat, becoming that spiritual nature, that spiritual man. We have to all go through it in one way or another.
Yeah, I want to share a verse with you right quick. It's Ephesians 3, where it says, for 3:14 says, "For this reason I bow my knees to the Father of our Master Yahushua Messiah, for whom all fatherhood in the heavens and earth is named, all fatherhood, in order that he might give you, according to the riches of his esteem by power, to be strengthened in the inner man through his Spirit, that the Messiah might dwell in your hearts through belief, and become rooted and grounded in love, in order that you might be strengthened to firmly grasp with all the set apart was the width and length and depth and height, to know the love of Messiah, which surpasses knowledge, in order that you might be filled to all the completeness of Elohim." Yeah, I was just thinking about that verse. You were sharing all that. The completeness of Elohim is all, know the height, the depth, the breadth, the width of his love, and to be able to show forth those attributes
Yeah.
From the
Yeah.
inside out. That's gonna be good. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Thanks a lot, bro.
While we're in the subject of, the feast and the hints and, because we are in this cyclical, mindset as Hebrews. The word, Shimkan means rejoice is associated with Sukkot. So he said to just be joyful. That's a time of joy, right? You bring in the harvest. It's the end of that season, a new season starting, and so we're supposed to rejoice. And then when Joshua, crossed the land into Canaan, they did Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and sometime later, if you look at when they went to take down the walls of Jericho, what were they doing? They were dancing, they were joyful, they were shouting the trumpets. And the word Hagag, which is also used like Moedim, is also referring to a feast, but that word itself means to move in circle or march in sacred procession. So that also hints that was like during the Feast of Sukkot, because they were going around joyful, blowing the trumpets, and through joy they were able to bring the tabernacle down. Everything is associated with the Mashiach, the feast. Even if some of you may have the Aleph Tav Bibles or Aleph Tav, I think some Bibles, like even the Sefer has them. I recommend that for the great translation, but it does at least have the Aleph Tavs in there. If you look at Leviticus 30, I think it's 23, and look through the feast of Sukkot and its ordinances, you'll see the Aleph Tav is right by the name of the Father and then the feast. So you have the Son. It just everything encircles the Son, and so it's quite amazing how it's all it's all intertwined and connected with that. I just wanted to hint that because there were, when they went around Jericho 7 times, that was something that alludes to the Sukkot as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Do we have any more questions or?
I want to know what you guys
comments?
actually think about about some of the findings that I had. Like, do you think these instances, like of, do you think it's possible that first fruits was happening in Genesis 4? Do you think that Genesis 22 references the Passover? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Miss Linda.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Wow, it's so good to be here tonight. I really love this discussion. Thank you for everybody that has contributed, and especially you guys that take your time to pull these scriptures out and give us some deeper meaning. Yes, I do believe it's a great possibility that Abraham kept them, Noah kept them. Was it exactly like what we understand now? Well, I don't know. But like Jose was saying, everything is about the Son. Everything is about Yahushua. He is at the center of everything. I can't imagine him without the feast days. I can't. So as I don't think the Bible was one way then and is another way now. I think the Father is absolutely spot on, never changing. So while in our humanity, we might not be able to see it all, I believe it's possible. Thank you for this teaching. So good.
Excellent, excellent. I will say this regarding the Shabbat, and I should have covered this last time that I taught, but even in the book of Jasher, the commentary of Jasher, it, when Pharaoh is talking about, the Israelites not doing, work, in the book of Jasher, it gives a little more commentary there, and it's specifically talking about the Sabbath. So that tells you right there that even before the Sabbath was mentioned in Exodus 20, where the so-called 10 commandments that we touched on the last time were listed out, that the Sabbath was already taking place. because the Sabbath, folks, goes all the way back to Genesis. What was it? I think it 2 verse 7. I think it was where where it says that Yahweh rested and blessed the seventh day, and that's so there's reference and hints to it all over. It's just a matter of can you dig it? Because that's what it's about. It's the glory of Yahweh to conceal a matter, and it's the glory of kings like you and I to search out a matter. And I'm telling you, forget all the conspiracy rabbit holes and distractions and nonsense and all that kind of stuff, and get caught up in the whirlwind of Yahweh, where he just takes you on a ride. I don't even know how to describe it, but some mornings I'm like, whoa, that was like 3 hours of intenseness, and like it just started with one word, and I'm telling you. But I will say this: in the coming days, and I don't mean like days as in like next week or anything like that, although it could happen, we don't know. But I'll just say this: you need to have a paper Bible. You need to have two things. You need to have a paper Bible, okay, good solid paper Bible, and you need to have a Strong's Concordance in paper, because guess what? God forbid that there is a large power outage from an EMP or from a cyber hack or something like that. Guess what? Doesn't affect you, because you have it right here. You have it right here. You have your Strong's Concordance, so that's all you need, and I guess we'll all get really intimate with the books that have sat on our shelves. Well, at least my shelf. I'll just throw myself under the bus, that we've started to read or had good intentions to read or whatever, when all this technology gets taken out, that's what we'll be doing. But yeah, we can't rely on, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love eSword, I do, but we got to have the paper version. We got to have the batteries not required version of everything that we can get. So,
or you can just read the one that he's written on your heart.
Well, that too. Yeah.
You have third option. Cameron, brother, go ahead.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the teaching tonight, Brother Brandon. I'm surprised that even. I mean, not surprised that you asked us, what does the word feast, when we translate feast, is moedim, correct? The Hebrew word is moed.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I had it pulled up.
It means set times.
Right. Yeah.
Times that are set. The Yahweh's calendar is based on those set times. It has been from the beginning, even when Abel and Cain and Abel went to do their offering.
Yep.
That was a Passover, I believe.
Oh, you think it was a Passover? Okay.
Well,
that's possible.
Maybe Yom Kippur, but it says at the set time, or at the right time, Cain and Abel went to offer their whatever to Yahweh, correct?
Yeah.
And the reason Cain was not accepted is because it was a blood sacrifice. So, and definitely what you talked about, Abraham and the three messengers, if you want to call them, everything is set time in Yahweh's calendar. And the reason that gives us such an amazing hope is everything is already set in his calendar. Yahusha had to be born in that year at that time. So it's not accident, no accident. Or we know that he was sacrificed, or he gave himself for us on Passover. And that whole week of Passover, from Passover to unleavened bread to first fruits, everything is precisely the way he planned it Yahuwah planned it before even he put everything in motion. That's why the sun, the moon, the stars, these are omens, these are signs, they tell us things that are going on. Not by accident. Everything is already set in motion and Yah, from the very first quote unquote time of the creation, the seventh day he rested. It says that. That was already preordained. And those, the Melchizedek priests, or the ones that we read in the Bible, Adam, Seth, going down the line to Noah, they knew all the calendars. Shem learned everything from Noah. Just imagine the fathers or the original race. Look, imagine yourself living 1,000 years. You know how amazingly, I should say, I mean, you become like, I don't know, I don't want to use the wrong word. We live like 80 years, 75 years, whatever, and we collect and gather all this information in our head, computer. 1,000 years, you know how smart, how knowledgeable it could be if you follow Yahuwah for 1,000 years?
Man, that's, yeah. Wow,
So we've devolved.
Oh, yeah. Language
Yeah.
has devolved. We've devolved.
Oh, yeah, everything. Yeah. So when they come and say that, oh, those were like Neanderthals, and they didn't know anything. There is so much that they've done, or it was done, that we don't know. A lot of things are coming out a little bit here and there. But those guys were amazingly smart. Even Abraham. I mean, I'm studying, teaching on Egyptian timeline. And if you correct it, it still has another 1,000 years of adjustment it needs. You see Abraham, you see Joseph, you see Moses not on their Hebrew names, and when they were in Egypt, of course. And it's just amazing the knowledge that we can gain from Yahweh, but still everything is at the set time. Yahusha will come on a day I don't want even sometimes in that fall, because there is controversy, questions about whether it's going to be in the beginning or it's going to be after Kippur. Anyhow, he'll come within that time frame. Maybe, a lot of things going to happen this Passover. A lot of people thinking about why Passover? Why not in May? His calendar is set, and he will move. He would do things according to the timeline that he has put in motion from the beginning of the creation. So, the last thing I want to say is cheer up, because he is in control of everything. Everything. Mm-hmm. I like what you say. I don't care what happens. Not that I don't care, but whatever happens in Russia or in China or this and that, what's that going to change anything? There's going to be, if it will affect our physical life, but Yahweh is in charge, and whatever he's planned and he's put in motion, it will happen from the beginning of creation or recreation, whatever you want to call it, until when he comes back and afterwards. So, yeah, praise Yah. We love him. We are safe and secure in his hands, and nothing will go that he will not allow or he hasn't planned. So thank you. I love you all. And if I have a good Shabbat tomorrow, I'm not leaving, I'm just saying.
Yom Teruah, brother. That's when that first light. That's right. He's gonna come just like the beginning of creation, brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, and I do agree as far as the land being the acceptable sacrifice. When I read that, I had that's what I was thinking too. But it's the scripture. There's so many things that if we look at the we look back, I mean, it's just so many hints in there. And I think we have Linda and then Owen.
Yep.
Go ahead, Linda.
Shalom, Brother Cameron. Thank you so much. Wow. I just want to add to Brandon's list. Gosh, get a Brenton Septuagint.
Oh yeah.
They are not,
yeah.
yeah, they are not that expensive. And wow, what a beautiful read. And you know, it's just the best. There you go. That's exactly it. It's got an apocrypha in it too. And I find things in there that amazing.
I don't read it enough. I need to more.
Yeah, check it out. You know, I believe it's the best source. I'm not a techie, so I do a lot of paper. I have a lot of books and they're heavy and you got to carry them around. But for my generation, I'm used to it.
Yeah.
Shalom, everybody. I love you all.
No, you're right. And you know, one of the things that our friends in Kentucky showed us when we were staying there, is they're like, hey, did you know that Passover is actually mentioned in the Septuagint where it's left out in the Masoretic text? I said, no, please show me. And in Jeremiah 38, I think it's verse 8, it talks about that I will gather you from the nations at Passover.
Yeah.
But, which is what he did coming out of Egypt, right? We call this, we refer to this as like the second Exodus is what we talk about it as.
And Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah.
During the Feast of Unleavened Bread, yeah.
Right. Which Sodom and Gomorrah is mentioned in Revelation 17 and 18 and Jeremiah 50 and 51 is an example of what's going to happen to Mystery Babylon as well. So we can't look back. But, you know, it's interesting that, you know, it's like, well, wait a minute, like, why? And like the book of Jeremiah is like completely in different order as well, because, you know, Jeremiah 38:8 is talking about the same thing in the Septuagint is talking about the same thing that Jeremiah 31 verse 8 is talking about in the Masoretic text, but it leaves out, the minor detail, of course, of Passover, that it would happen at Passover. He would gather us at Passover. Now, I'm not saying, for the record, okay, not saying that it's going to happen this Passover or anything. I'm just saying it says it's going to happen at Passover. That's what it says. Okay. But yeah, I agree with you, Miss Linda. The Septuagint, I think Matthew refers to it as it's like either, I think he said like 97 or 98% accurate translation wise, because the Christine, it's called the Brenton Septuagint. Brenton right there, Septuagint. Okay. And it's about, I don't know, I probably paid like $30 for it, I think. You know, it is very small because it is Greek and English next to one another. So I would recommend getting a magnifying glass because it is very small. But you know what the Septuagint is it's an ancient Greek translation. Excuse me. But it was translated into the Greek from the ancient Paleo-Hebrew before the Babylonian captivity. That's what makes it so important and so vital, is that it's the only transcript that's from pre-Babylon, pre-500, circa 583 BCE, before the Common Era. Everything after that was from the Masoretic text via the Masoretes, and then later on, 1,000 years after our Messiah was born, crucified, rose from the grave, resurrected, that then the Masoretic vowel pointing system came along, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole you could go down there. but it just made it even worse. But it's such a pure translation because of that reason, because it was translated from the Paleo-Hebrew before these Paleo-Hebrew scrolls were destroyed, and translated into the Greek, and then later on into English. So, but yeah, that's what it is. Brother Owen. Oh, you're muted, buddy. There you go.
Yes, the book you just had,
Yeah, the Brenton Septuagint. That one?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's called the Brenton BRENTON Septuagint LXX.
All right.
Brenton Septuagint LXX. And Christine said she just ordered it for $18 the other day.
Where at?
I think on Amazon. That would be
Alright,
my guess.
okay.
That's where I got it from.
And, I got two other questions. The first question is that is there any way I can get those notes that you had?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Because I was holding one of the babies and I couldn't
Yeah.
screenshot.
Yeah.
And wow, the third one left me.
All good.
Oh yeah, what translation do you use?
I use a variety. So my daily reader that I read the Torah portions from personally is from the Hallelujah scriptures. That's what I use.
How do you get that? Because I've been trying to get that forever, and I just
reach out to me, and I'll show you how to get it. Okay.
All right, thank you.
But I've had this for, I don't know, probably 3 years or something like that. And I just really like, the way it's laid out and all the Hebrew that's in it and everything like that. And that's what I use for my devotionals. For my study, honestly, I've had the same New King James Bible for like 15 years that I took out of my old church's Lost and Found. I asked permission, but I took it out of the, it has somebody else's name in the front of it.
It's yours now.
Yeah, it's mine now. It's been mine for like 15 years or something like that. But that's what I use, for a bunch of studying. And then I also, as you saw, I have the e-sword, and for studying purposes, I don't just use one translation, because I think I've talked about this before, whether I've talked about it on here or just on one of my videos, but I look at a translation as, okay, it's like a prism. All right. You remember the prisms, like I remember them in 4th grade for me in science class, where they'd say, okay, you see how the light reflects through the prism, right? And they'd say, like, you see the rainbow, right? Well, that's how the revelation comes through one translation, or how the meaning comes through one translation. But when you actually turn a prism, it changes the way that the light bends. Okay.
Yes.
And to me, that's when I read different translations. Okay. It gives, maybe it's a different, it's a different viewpoint, or you wouldn't see it that way or whatever. So on my e-sword, I have, I have the Brenton Septuagint. I have the New King James. I have the King James. I have the Strongs with the KJV as well. I have the Scriptures 2009, or what's referred to as the ISR, which is the one out of South Africa, which is another good one. And then I have the one that was before that, the 1998 version, which I like even better, because it removes all the new moon references and stuff like that get people on that lunar cycle and stuff like that. But I use, a variety of different translations, probably 6 or 7. And then I also have the RSTNE, the Restored True Name Edition, that Matthew refers to as well, the volume 3. So I have that, and yeah, just a variety, a plethora, I guess you could say, of material. And I even have a Sefer, just as an added viewpoint, something like that, just something to compare. Yeah, I have a bunch of translations. I even have a complete Jewish Bible. I got the complete Jewish Bible because Sister Tamara was telling me that that's where some of the Torah portion information was coming from. So when I started doing the Torah portions and publishing those, I wanted to make sure I had that as well. So yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded question, but yeah, that's where I am. Okay, yeah.
And to help your further your studies, I mean, you cannot use like some of you are already using the eSword, where they have an app where it takes the Greek word and it tells you what the Hebrew word is equivalent to, and you can always go back to the law first mentioned and kind of like look it up that way, and using the Septuagint. Now, even Yahusha quoted right out of the Septuagint. I'm not saying
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, on Mark 7, when he quoted Isaiah 29,
Isaiah 61, you mean?
Well, in Mark 7, when he's talking about Isaiah, it says,
the spirit of Yahweh.
"These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts far from me, and vain you worship me,
that
teach
part.
doctrines."
Okay.
Yeah. So he basically quoted from the Septuagint on that. So
You want to find out how true it is that it's all from Septuagint, you go to the book of Hebrews. A lot of the quotations in the book of Hebrew from Tanakh, from Torah and other and the prophets, it's not in our Bibles, in the English Bibles. They have changed that. A lot of it is straight from Septuagint. Or that. Yeah. It's amazing how many. There's more than 10 or 12 that I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we throw the Masoretic away, but we help us, you definitely use both and use a sermon to definitely seek out the truth for sure.
Oh, and there's a translation of the book of Matthew that's called the Shem Tov, and it has some and it was written in Hebrew originally as well, and it has some interesting, which I haven't ordered one of those. I need to order one of those, but it has some interesting. Yeah. But it has some interesting insight. Like, so one of the phrases, and this came out of the RST&E because it quotes or has references from the Shem Tov, is it says instead of repent for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, it says repent for the kingdom of heaven is offered, which is a completely different mindset. But then it goes back to, okay, what did we just talk about in our teaching tonight, Matthew 22, that come to the wedding feast, RSVP to the wedding feast. The kingdom of heaven is offered. But kingdom of heaven is at hand. Well, it's at hand. It's in my hand. I'm offering it. I'm offering it to you.
Wow.
But it's just stuff that unless we really take the time,
I know. It's just
and go slow and go line upon line and precept upon precept and not be in a hurry, we miss out on these things, So, but yeah, that's another good one to have.
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna have to go because I'm in the babies. We all share the same room, so they gotta go to sleep. And
that's all good.
But I'll reach out to you.
Bless you, brother.
All right, bless you too.
Blessings.
Shalom.
All right.
Shalom to everybody.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Tracy, go ahead, sister. Shalom, sister.
Shalom, everyone. Lovely conversation. Every now and then I get kind of excited when we some conversations are a little more exciting, and I love this. Thank you, Brother Brandon, for all of your studying and everything that you're sharing with us. And before I forget to ask, I'm going to ask right off the bat, notes. So I would like to add some of the things that you have to my notes. How do we find those?
if you drop your email in the chat, or you could, private message me in the chat or whatever. I've actually had a few people do it already. So while other people have been talking, I've actually been sending out the notes. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, I can send
I'll
you
do
the
that.
notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And my email is
Yeah.
here, let me it's muchmoretruth@gmail.com. So, but I'll put it in the chat as well. We you have it.
At
But yeah, I can send
persecuted.com.
it. Yeah. Much more silence, much more cut off from the world, all that stuff at gmail.com.
that's what we all need to be. That's something we
Right.
gotta come to. Day of Atonement, that's kind of one of my favorite subjects. I absolutely love that because I think it's been really obscure and people have not understood it over a long period of time. And I think Yah is really beginning to open it up. And I get so excited because I have asked in the past Abba to help me understand what it means, because it's in the fall feast. I know we're looking forward to it, so it has to mean something. And so Abba has given me some lovely things on it. So when I hear you talk about it, and I've heard Matthew now say some things that Abba has shown me, and that excites me. That just excites me. And so I want to point out a couple of things. Leviticus chapter 25 talks about the trumpet sounding on the day of Jubilee.
Yeah.
On the 10th day, right, in the 7th month. And so I, reading all those things, and I see that the Day of Atonement is associated with the Jubilee. Well, then I read some more and I'm learning more. And then I find that the Jubilee Day, it is associated with the great and terrible day of the Lord. I don't know if you have noticed that. Okay, thank you, Brother Jose.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. So it is associated. And so, okay, now look at the minor prophets. All of the minor prophets are talking about the great and terrible day of the Lord. All of a sudden, this ball, it just cracks open, right? And it just all these things start to flood out, and you start to see things that you didn't see before. And so that was pretty exciting to me. Well, then I see, just so many things. Psalm 91, this Jubilee is associated, either the trumpets or the Jubilee, it's associated with the catching away of the saints. And that's why I brought up Psalm 91, because it says we are brought in under the covenant of his wings. We'll see what's happening, but it won't come near us, because we are in that special place, that drawn away place with him. During this great and terrible day of the Lord. Hallelujah. That is amazing and so encouraging and so beautiful. And what hope we have to look forward to that.
That's it. And that's why I'm so consumed with trying to get as many people agreeing that we should be in the covenant as possible. And that includes the people who are following all of the Torah, all of the book of law. I'm like, no. You're not supposed to be living under the law. You're supposed to be in the covenant,
We're in the covenant. That we are. It is about the covenant. That's right.
Yeah.
We are. It's the wedding. It's the marriage. It's the change of our garments. We're going to see that shedding of this flesh and putting on that garments of light, so we can enter into that marriage with our Yeshua. We're going to be changed in the twinkling of an eye as we enter into that place. Wow. That's an
what
incredible.
it's all about.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing.
Yeah, and what the Christians miss out on is they want, they're like, oh, Psalm 91. And I'm like, but you're not dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. It says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will be safe under the shadow of the Almighty.
Yeah.
You're not under the shadow of the Almighty if you're not in his covenant. His covering is his covenant. Okay, I'll share something with you real quick. All right. This is something that came to me. I was out working in the shop where I was tearing down some walls and doing some electrical work and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I hear this, I'm listening to worship music, and I'm just, meditating on him and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I hear that that the ark that Noah boarded was the covenant itself.
Yes.
That by living in the covenant or by the covenant, that's the ark that he entered into and was saved from the flood. So the ark of the covenant.
See that little picture right there? I have that drawn right here. The ark is the covenant.
There you go. Confirmation, second witness. And I literally hear this randomly, and then I started to realize that, because when I would hear these random things, I'm like, wait a minute, it's not always the Holy Spirit. It could actually be a melech, a messenger, just like with Daniel, with John. They would have a messenger show up and give them what? A message, but that's wonderful that, that you're seeing it as well.
It is.
Or that you've been showing it as well. But, it's like, so the ark or before the covenant was the ark, then it became the ark of the covenant.
Yeah.
And then where's the ark of the covenant now? Now we have become the ark of the covenant because the covenant is inside of our hearts. It's written on the tablets of our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
That's a good word. And that's the truth. I believe those things are all right. It's all a picture. The things from the beginning, right? Tell the things about the end.
Yeah. Isaiah 46:10. He's declared the end from the beginning.
Yeah. Isaiah 61, 1-11 talks about, it says, proclaiming the liberty to the captives and opening of the prisons to them who are bound, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our El. So so look up those great and terrible days of the Lord scriptures in the minor prophets, and I think that's
especially the book of Joel, for sure.
Joel, and Jeremiah, even. I mean, you see it, you'll see it everywhere. Isaiah chapter 26, you'll see it all over. Anyway, I'm going to put my email. I'm going to message you right now. I'll put my email.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Shalom.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. Shalom.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Yeah, it's named different ways, like the year of recompense, the year that's setting the captives free, the terrible, the terrible day. Brother, go ahead.
Yeah.
Shalom.
The passage that Sister Tracy quoted from Isaiah, when Yahushua went to the synagogue on Shabbat, and he opened the scroll of Isaiah and he read that, but he didn't read the whole thing. And I tell you why he didn't. Because Isaiah 61:2, the last part, which you also talked about, Brother Jose, that says to declare the day of vengeance upon our God, day of vengeance over Elohim. That's Isaiah 61:2, to proclaim the year of Yahweh's favor and the day of vengeance of our Elohim. He did not quote that part, the last part. He opened the scroll, he read all the way to the day of vengeance, and then he closed the book. Because he hadn't come for the day of vengeance yet. And like what our sister Tracy said, that's when he comes back again, and he would fulfill that verse. He did not quote the last part of it. Just look at it. Why? He closed it in the middle of a verse, verse 2. Because the day of vengeance is like exactly what she said. It's the day of recompense, the day of when he comes back to judge the earth, when he comes back to take vengeance upon the earth and inhabitants of it, the ones that are not written in his book. So yeah, it's important to realize that, because he has not come back, did not come down. That's what he said. He said, I did not come to judge, but to save. But next time, this time, the second coming of, let's say, when he comes back, he's gonna come. He's not coming for favor and everything. He's coming for vengeance. He's coming for judgment, and that we should be aware of that. And that's why I believe that what Brother Brandon said, yeah, we should try to direct as many people as possible to come to the covenant, because if you're not in the covenant, then your part will be the vengeance or the judgment. So, and that we don't want anybody to go into that, because it's just a terrible thing. The terrible day of Yahweh. So anyhow, I just wanted to mention that, so so that he did not finish the whole verse. He closed it up, and when he comes, then he's going to come for vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just wanted to add that, yeah, the Yom Teruah has 2 additional sacrifices. You had like the 10 days of all, right? And then the 10 days of all, then you have the Yom Kippur, and then Yom Kippur has 2 additional sacrifices. That makes 12. So it's kind of funny how we're talking about the Jubilee, when he's going to come back and release the 12 tribes of Israel completely. That's the and that alludes to the Jubilee, and we're looking at 120 Jubilees, which would, if you count them all, is supposed to be the I mean, if we get our math right, we could actually at least know the year of, or around what year he's going to be back. Yeah, this is the study right now. I mean, we definitely are, we will definitely want to get this part right. But I think Yahushua alludes to, when he was, were not the graves open when he was raised from the dead? Wasn't that like the following year after he started his ministry? Wasn't his ministry about 1.5 years? And so we could say that it could very well be that maybe not when he opened up the scroll, but the following year was the actual year that he set the captives free. So, I mean, it's just one of the things. So again, that's a hint. We definitely want to, definitely more scripture to be able to substantiate that.
Yeah, totally agree with you. That was his day of Jubilee. Is the year of Jubilee, when he came to the synagogue and opened that scroll and said, today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your eyes, in your ear, in your hearing. So he was declaring the Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
And he was declaring himself to be Yahweh in the flesh too.
Absolutely.
I will say this regarding, those who are not walking in covenant, but are still believers like I was, 3.5, 4 years ago. I think it's a situation of, look at the temple itself, right? We look at the temple, we have an outer court, which they were still allowed in the temple. The Gentiles were still allowed in the temple, but only Yasharel was allowed inside the inner court.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a level of intimacy.
Yes.
That is regarding, it's not that they're not going to be grafted in. It's not that they're not going to be in the New Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Or in heaven, as they call it, and I do like to kind of poke a little bit and be like, hey, where's that Christian gate? I only see 12 gates, but we all have to be, whether we're a wild branch or a native branch, we all have to be regrafted in through the blood of our Messiah. And, that's the important thing. But, it does say many references to, that our master come back and that he should find us so doing, and, Revelation 22:14 even talks about doing the commands, that he and given access to the tree of life, which again, like Brother Don talks about, we're going back to the garden. That's where we're going back to. But it says, blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life to enter through the gates into the city. So is there a special place? Yes. I think it's, I think it's the two analogies of the 144,000 in Revelation 7, verses like 1 through 7, I think it is. And then the great multitude that is mentioned in the mixed multitude, which is exactly what came out of Egypt, a mixed multitude,
Yeah.
right? That's mentioned in Revelation 7, verse 9. And then it's also the bride, okay, is Israel, right, which is represented in the 144,000, and the remnant is what I believe is represented in the great multitude. You know, it's just it's the difference between the crowds. The crowds were there for the miracles and the food and the healing, but the disciples came after the crowds were sometimes sent away or they had just dispersed, and they followed Yahusha wherever he went, and they pressed in for understanding. And it's the same thing with Abraham and Lot as an analogy. You know, they're like, well, what? Why? You have two righteous men, both are righteous,
Yeah.
it says. But one man has no idea what's coming, and the other one is called a friend of Elohim.
Yeah.
So it's, hey, do you want to be an acquaintance with Elohim? Do you want to know of him or whatever? Or you want to be known as his friend? You know? And that's what it's all about. That's what I think that the difference between those who were on the milk of the word, of just the gospel, of just, you know, Romans 10:9, you know, calling upon his name, confessing with his mouth that he is master, and that believing in their heart that Yahweh will raise them from the dead and they shall be saved. And then the meat of the word, which is coming into covenant. It's obeying his commands, observing his Shabbat, keeping his feasts, doing the dietary requirements, all that, you know. That's the difference to me. So I'm not saying that they're literally, you know, like going to hell or not going to be there or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that there's an inner and an outer court, just like there was an inner and outer court in the tabernacle of meeting or in the temple itself, you know, when Solomon built the temple. So that's what I would reference.
Yeah, we're going to be the priesthood, like what we are going to be in the inner court or close to Yahusha. Let's just put it that way. And then, but no, I did not mean to say that if anybody who doesn't believe like what the way we do or in the Melchizedek priesthood or anything. No, I mean, I know a lot of wonderful Christian people that they really believe in, well, J, that they call, and they're not going to be left out. They're just going to be, you know, not as close to Yahusha's, that's a throne as we're going to be, or the priesthood. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Very good. Very good. I just want to share Numbers 10, 33. So they set out for the Mount of Yahuwah 3 days journey. And if you go to 35, it says, and when the ark set out, Moshe said, arise, O Yahuwah, or Yahusha, right? Because he rose, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you. And when it rested, he said, return, O Yahuwah, or Yahusha, to the Miramars and Miramars of Israel. So when they rest is when the return of Yahusha comes. That is because the work is done. Now he's ready to, you know, do his judgment. As far, and this is Torah. He's already prophesying when Yahusha is to be back. Yeah. Tracy, go ahead, sister.
Okay, just quick, like, so you were talking, Brandon, about the people, and it made me think about the ark again, how, you know, there were different levels in the ark, right? And this is just running around in my head. I don't really have anything to connect this to, but I have wondered about this, you know, well, is this in reference to like how deep you go with Yahusha, right? Or, you know, because some people will be just at the wedding supper and someone's going to be the bride, right? And
right. Yeah, the guests versus the bride. That's another good
Right.
analogy. Yep.
Right. So I just wonder, if that, if the ark is also sort of a picture of that. I don't know. Anyway, just a little thought. That's all. Thank you.
Well, hey, I'll throw you a curveball back at you. What if,
Okay.
how many levels was the ark? Was it 3 or 4?
I think it was 3.
Oh, it was
and
3?
then- I
Okay,
think it
darn.
was 3.
Then it won't work. It won't
Okay.
work.
Well, I think that's what it was, because I think that there was the main level out there on the top,
Yeah.
and then there was 2 levels down, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe someone else knows better,
Yeah.
but that's kind of what
I'm seeing a lot of 3s from people, so I think
Okay.
that's right. I was gonna say, what if it was 4, and then we would have the PaRDeS within the ark?
You think that's related to the third heaven?
Yeah,
Oh,
probably. Yeah.
Well,
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
a lot of trees in the Bible, in the word, in the Tanakh, a lot. Like your body, soul, and spirit, for example. That's tree. The ark, of course. The temple, outer, inner, and then holy of holies. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I have an interesting verse for you. I'll just, Joshua 3, verse 4. Just read it and think about it. We'll talk about it, or we can do it now. I don't mind.
Verse 3, so chapter 3, verse 4.
Yes, this is when they are going to cross Jordan to go to the promised land. Okay, maybe you can read it from verse before that.
Yeah,
have
when
to look at it.
you see the Ark of the Covenant,
Yes,
and they commanded the people when you see the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh your Elohim and the priests, the Levites bearing it, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Only keep a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, so that you know which way to go, for you have not passed over this way before.
yeah. I'm interested. The whole thing is beautiful, but the 2,000 cubits. I read something about that. So basically, the distance of 2,000 cubits. You can go ahead, and I read it in 2 different ways, but 2,000 years between Yahusha going and making a way for us, and then we have to follow him after 2,000 years. We have,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, I thought that was very interesting. The 2,000 years, the 2,000 cubits, and then somebody did a lot of mathematical thing about the changing the cubit, and anyhow, I am not prophesying, but it came out to 2028 from the time he
Well, well, I'm gonna give you another one to add to that one. If you look at the equinox,
Jose loves 2028.
yeah, I do. Everything just alludes to it, and I had a dream a while back about this too. But yeah, so if you look at the equinox when it actually happened, I think it had to happen on, I think had to happen on a Wednesday. Well, the only day around that time frame when Yahusha could have been crucified in the middle of the week, which was Wednesday, actually it was AD 228. Okay, it was like, and then after that, it was like some years way after or years before, but that was like the one time when the equinox happened, when that puts the day the 14th on a Wednesday, according to the. So if we're looking at exactly 2,000 years, that would be, coming up in
28.
just a few years.
Well, it's kind of interesting because a cubit is actually 1.5 feet. So when you look in my Bible, because I looked up scripture he was talking about, and it said 3,000 feet. But it's interesting that Yahweh doesn't measure in feet; he measures in cubits, which is 2 cubits. Of course, is a yard, right?
It's like an arm's length.
Well, yeah,
Right, from here to
18
here?
inches,
Yes.
18 inches is from the tip of the middle finger to the elbow, right? Yeah. So
If I have to go look back, if I can find it, if I find the numerology of it, the number wise, and that, I think he said something, it will come depending, because there were two cubits. It was a royal cubit and a regular cubit.
yeah, 2 cubits equals 1 yard
Yeah.
of our measurement.
Yeah, so depending on which one he measured it with, it came somewhere to 2028 or to 2032.
I was thinking 28 or 31, but more towards 28. But anyway,
No, I mean,
well, it's his
it's
timing.
interesting.
We'll see.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
All I'm gonna say is there's a big eclipse coming in April 8th, 2024, and it's gonna make the Aleph Tav over America. And it just happens to cross right at the New Madrid fault line. So
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
you're welcome. You're
Is
welcome.
that when the
in-
the 7 years of drought completely start happening?
No.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's
Well, I think
2024.
that's coming sooner.
I'm kidding.
It seems-
Well,
I'll just put it this way. If we're still here in 2025, I'll be very surprised. I'm just gonna put it to you.
okay. Well, so be it. We're ready to go.
'Cause- Yeah,
Uh,
because
The sooner the better.
yeah, maybe one of these days I'll get them to let me do another prophetic teaching, and I'll actually tell you guys like where I think how deep I think we are. Think, okay? Not saying we are.
I
Not
know.
prophesying we are.
No,
Think, you know.
we are close. We are close.
Yeah.
Now the place where we're doing Passover, I was there for a Sukkot, and that river is right on the, I mean, it's right there, and it's flat. So, you know, and this is happening in spring, and I'm thinking, okay, is this when the woman, where they try to wash her down the river? Is it this Passover?
You're a flat earther.
I'm just saying, you know.
Flat rivers. What's that?
Because no, I'm serious. I don't know if I was it's Dakota. The river is, you know, we're going to be at the height of spring. They're expecting heavy rains this spring. And this place is flat. And you know, last year when we were there, it was summertime, and so it didn't have all the rain, right? And so I'm sitting here going, okay, this could be it. That might be why it's only going to be 5 days there.
The dragon in Revelation 12 spews forth water. The Chinese dragon was a being that was able to control the rain.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean.
And La Palma Island is shaped like a dragon.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's interesting. I mean, these are just thoughts that go through my head every time we have a new holiday that comes up. You know, I go through this, or I go through some. Okay, is this gonna be it? And then, you know, it seems it could happen.
It's good.
But it gets me looking forward to it. You know.
Yes.
I've been debating about whether the bride's hidden in the wilderness right now, and that this wilderness is actually spiritual and not physical.
Yeah.
That's what I've been kicking around in my head.
Well, I was telling Israel, I said, you know what? In the way my parents set up this trust and stuff, if we weren't in this particular situation where we're staying right now, you know, we wouldn't be able to work, right? And the trust is set up, and they let me in. They let me in here because of the way the trust is set up. So I'm sitting like, it was like Yahoo had planned it, because he knew that he planned it long before I had to have neck spine surgery, and, you know, and needed to be on disability. So it was like, yes, I'm probably going to have to get out of that at some point, but at the same token, you know, he's been providing for me in Israel this whole time
Yeah, I know that.
in that
Amen.
regard. So I just have to be thankful for what he's provided, and
Amen.
let him work out the details for the rest of it, you know, for the getting out to the wilderness. Because
Well-
I'm still in the city, you know, I'm still
Yeah.
in the city. Kind of complicated in the city too. There's a lot of, you see all these nefarious individuals doing things under the table. And you see all the Mohammedans living in the shades of the park and all this kind of, I mean, it's like you really get an upfront picture of everything. On the left side of me, I have the Democratic contract chasers, and on the right side of me, I have the Mohammedans in that building. So, and you hear their music, and you hear these people planning, making plans, and all this kind of stuff, and none of them like me. And every Shabbat usually they get to hear me sing music to Yahweh. It's like right in the middle. I'm right in the
And
middle
they
of all
also hear
that.
the shofar blow.
Yeah, they also get to hear the shofars blow.
Break out the Bible and show them how Yahuwah, the
Oh, they
father
don't-
of
they don't-
Ishmael,
they
what
don't-
name
they don't
was
talk to
revealed
you.
to her.
They don't
Huh?
talk to you here.
No,
don't
I'm just saying because
They don't talk to us. Yeah, no.
no, I'm just saying they do believe Jesus is a prophet, this and that, and they do believe the sacred writings, as they call it, the Bible. They have their own version, of course. They give all the credit to Ishmael. But if you in the Bible, it shows that Hagar was showing the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh as the name of the father, as the name of the father. So that's a good scripture to
Elroy.
show them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
Well, if I was in an apartment, they'd be hearing me preach really loud. So, you know.
I'm with you,
We're not
Brandon.
in an apartment.
They just text
Yeah, we're in between two big apartment complexes, but we're in a house.
Gotcha.
And we're in the back house too. We're not in the front house. So we're kind of hidden in
There you go.
there.
There you go. All right. Well, we should probably call it a night here.
Yeah.
Brother Dominic, up there in China, would you pray us out, brother?
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Father, for our evening tonight. We appreciate Brendan teaching and looking for our Saint Sabbath tomorrow. And we are very thankful for tonight gathering, and we hope to see all your children tomorrow at the fellowship afternoon, and bless the teaching of Matthew tomorrow. And then we ask you that in your name, Yahusha, our high priest, Kohen Gadol. Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.